Hey everybody, it is December 5th, 2025 here with your after hours recap. It was a bit of a mixed bag today. I kind of came into the market seeing the QQQ really pushing, seeing gold and commodities act pretty well. And so, there was several stocks that were on my watch list last night and they started to trigger. And I did get now small size, granted, none of my positions exceeded a 5% portfolio position, which was good. But I got a little bit trigger happy. And let's just kind of walk through the stocks that I took, some of the actions that I did. First things first, I thought FSLR was a potential higher low setup over the last few days, just building a little bit of a higher low. So when we started to take out yesterday's highs, today about 161 bucks, I got myself positioned into this thing. And then, just it closing fairly weak and going into a weekend, I don't want to hold stocks, red into the weekend, especially new purchases. So very small loss, took it off the table, a couple bucks, not a big deal. Initially, I was comfortable giving it all the way to 252, but the last thing I really want is there to be a weak close, a bit of a gap down into the 50-day, and then just mentally, you can't really get a potential position on a long as, a bounce maybe off the 50-day. Instead, you're cutting a bigger loss, and then you're not able to kind of execute a potential bounce set up at the 50-day, come Monday. And that's something that I just wanted to avoid. You know what? We close slightly red. Let me just go ahead and get rid of it. The other one that I thought was fairly interesting with gold pushing today was NEM. And again, I was comfortable using last day's lows, Thursday's lows effectively. And what happened? This thing started to push in the morning. I get long NEM and gold at the time, acting perfectly fine, it's pushing in the morning. And then all of a sudden we just start to break down, right? We just run up and then all of a sudden you get slammed and I'm just like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and kind of get off of my NEM into the close. Same deal with GFI. Now, NEM was a 5% position. NEM was a 3% position. So very, very small positions, totally manageable losses, but same deal. You get the push just like gold, and then it slams, and I'm like, okay, is this thing just going to, hopefully bounce here, and I can hold it, into the weekend, but not quite. And I would have been comfortable holding like a smaller red position, but it just closing so weak, not like eating the loss was a big deal, just holding, a weak close into the weekend when, you're kind of vulnerable to potential news, and then, a gap down in either direction or even a gap up, right? Like, it's just, even though my stop initially was lower, and my position sizing was perfectly fine, I just figured, you know what, let's kind of reset the deck. I'm comfortable. And here's the thing. I thought I was trading some stocks that weren't going to be, correlated necessarily to the S&P 500, which, finished in the green, with the NASDAQ, which, finishes effectively flat. But instead, gold, I thought, gold had done a really nice job just consolidating. And, maybe we could continue our uptrend, but not so fast. Gold, my NEM, my GFI kind of forced me out. Nat Gas was on fire today. And so I was sitting there thinking to myself, man, EQT, beautiful cup and handle, not extended from the 50, trying to break out. So what do? I literally buy this thing. I mean, I couldn't have top ticked it any better. 62 bucks. Again, very small position. And what ends up happening, I end up getting stopped out at low of day. About 60, 63 is exactly where I got stopped out, if I'm not mistaken. And, that was just kind of, that's just how it goes sometimes. So it's like, I'm thinking I'm trading Nat Gas. Nat Gas is flying. I'm over here trading gold, and gold's working really well. I'm trading FSLR as a higher low setup. That's not working. Again, probably the best thing that I did was small size across the board. Of course, I took a few more trades today. For some reason, I woke up feeling a little bit trigger happy. I also took Rubrik on the earnings gap up. So you had this beautiful gap up in the morning. You had a nice little pullback in here. And then as soon as you started to turn back up right through VWAP, 86 and change, I got situated in this name very nicely. And then we push well, only for it to really just consolidate the rest of the day and go nowhere. And as soon as we started to close week, 84 bucks was my stop. But you know what? I was just like, let me just cut half, effectively flat, which is exactly what I did. Took flat on half of my position. So effectively no loss on half my shares. And then the rest of those shares will be used at 84. And I can kind of just have a little bit smaller size through the weekend, $84 as my stop. Even if I do get stopped out lower, all the way down to the 200-day would be kind of what I would be watching for a potential add. I mean, literally all the way to 78 would be a pretty ideal scenario, but $84 for now will be my stop on that. And it was just like, I thought just stay away from, QQQ related names for a moment. Although, you could argue Rubrik is definitely a tech name just because of how many up days in a row we've been. How much traction are you really going to get on the long side? Well, there were some stocks out there like PLTR, which pushed really nicely back through the 50-day. VRT is another one. Really nice push today as well. So there was some nice action. MU was another one. WDC. I mean, there's definitely some stocks out there that were showing some life. It just happened to not be in any of the names that I was taking. Like I said, one of the best things that I've been doing lately is not oversizing positions. That has been super, super helpful, especially when, you're wrong. So, that's good. I'd prefer to just build upon my winners. Recently, Tesla has been a good one since I bought it over the 50 simple moving average. This one closed green as well. So that was very nice. And then the other thing that I did pretty well was I shorted QUBT just effectively right in the morning as a rejection of the 200 simple moving average, like 13, 22, and all things considered, a nice failure into the end of the day. So at least there's that, because I did get stopped out of Rigetti. I do at least have a nice little short on QUBT using 200 SMA as my guide. So the longs weren't working, but the short was definitely working. And then speaking of shorts, Netflix, I don't know that we could have gotten a better close on the news that they are buying Warner Brothers. Just absolutely fantastic. They're going to have to dilute like $65 billion. That's not peanuts. That's like 15% of their market cap. So not too great if you're bullish on Netflix, at least in the short term, in my opinion. And we are rolling over into a stage 4 decline. So, hopefully lower we go. I am in about 10 bucks higher from here. So feeling pretty good, at least on this one. This one today, made up for some of my sins of, trying an EQT, trying GFI, trying NEM. And I thought if I just stuck to a few commodity names today, I would have been better off than, trying to get situated in tech-related names. But I couldn't really resist Rubrik on the gap up. Obviously, that was a pretty awesome move. And ultimately, I still think the market is pretty damn good. I think if NVIDIA can reclaim the 50 simple moving average, I think we might be fine. But again, you hit the 20, you reject again today. TSM, which looked pretty good, kind of a nasty close. CRDO over the last few days since it gapped up on earnings has done a bunch of nothing. So, take that for what it's worth. We talked about Intel yesterday and that $42.50 level as a potential double top short sale. Well, today you went right back into that level. You got just above it and you rejected and you closed pretty weak. So, this market is fine. I mean, in some respects, you're looking at maybe some tech names like a VRT or a PLTR coming back to life, and then in other respects, it's just a little bit choppy. There are still some absolutely monster names like Bloom Energy, just a nice UNR continuing right back up. Fantastic action in some places. Obviously, ASML continues to be a really, really nice name over the last few days. But ultimately, it's a little bit choppy. You get the market just grinding up 7, 8, 9 days in a row, basically. And you just get a little bit of digestion. Even in some of the healthcare stocks we've been digesting recently, whether you look at a GMED or you look at a Lilly, right? Some of these have just been coming down. Some of them, if you look at a GH, right? Some of them just have been chopping around, some better than others ultimately. And for the record, GMED has superb earnings and sales. So, this one's nice to actually see it go higher. But again, it's just a little bit of a choppy environment. Like I said, I woke up a little trigger happy today. I don't know why. I thought if I could avoid some of the tech names, and Rubrik being the only one that I was going to take in the tech space, I thought I was going to be fine. But ultimately it was the commodities, and XOM is one that I still own from the 50 simple moving average a few days ago. Pretty nasty close. CVX closing below the 200, pretty nasty close. So, are these names going to get going? You also look at an FANG. This one's been absolutely fantastic, but a pretty disgusting close as well. Not that it's a big deal. We are trying to kick up into a stage 2 uptrend, potentially in this name. But yeah, it was just a little difficult. Like I said, the best thing that I did today was not oversizing any positions, and I think that was probably my saving grace. Sticking into a name like iron as well on the short side, just kind of coming down today 3%. And so long as this is living below the 20, I'm comfortable to just kind of sit in this one as well. And again, that was just kind of my saving grace, putting on QUBT as a short against the 200. That kind of made up for a little sin of mine, going long some of these gold miners today. And I sized them down, but ultimately I didn't want to sit, with a weak closing position into the weekend. That doesn't necessarily make me feel good. Like I said, God forbid you get a bit of a gap down into the 50 simple moving average. Now, instead of potentially that being a buying opportunity, it just becomes a manager risk kind of a situation where, now I'm not able to really buy that dip. I kind of just got to exit my loser, and a bigger loser at that. So I just figured, what, clean slate, eat the tiny losses, and then just move on to these better opportunities, hopefully in the week ahead. So that was just kind of some of what I noticed today. Nothing really crazy. I mean, airlines, nice little job perking right back up. That caught my attention. UAL is another one. This, kind of just hanging in there. Delta is another one. VSCO had a nice earnings gap up, really nice push and close today. Path continues to act pretty dang well, all things considered. And really that's just kind of the scenario that we're in. MDB was another one that I thought acted really, really nicely today, going back through that 401, I believe it was level 402, as the close on the earnings gap up day. So yeah, that is that's just kind of some of my thoughts. It's a little choppy. Russell continues to look great. Mid caps continue to look pretty great. There's a few of these MDY related names that I think look pretty dang awesome. But again, just straight up off the lows, right into a level of supply. I won't be too surprised if we just chop around for a little bit. But, there are stocks within that group like Sienna being one of the bigger names within the MDY, just perfect. I mean, maybe it needs to build out a little bit more of the right-hand side, but a nice close. So, we'll kind of see what next week brings. Like I said, I was just able to reset the deck, hold on to some of the longs that are still acting well. I still own a little piece of Rubrik. I still have my Tesla. I still have some iron. I still have some Netflix. I still have some ExxonMobil. So that is good. And we'll just kind of take it one day at a time. And I've got QUBT as the short against the 200. So be on the lookout. It won't be today, I don't believe. If it is, it'd be way later tonight. But on Sunday, I will do another little video recap, just kind of recapping November's trades. Obviously, I closed Oklo yesterday, and that is tallied on to October, so I will kind of post an update a little bit as to how October actually finished out versus what it was while I still had that open position. But we'll post in the room all of the finished trades, and then I'll make that video and I'll post it onto the socials as well, so you guys can avoid some of the pitfalls and mistakes that I made in the month of November. Still a pretty good trading month if I'm not mistaken, but I kind of got to go through and sift through how I really did, and we'll kind of look at it over the weekend. I'll be out of town tomorrow, but I'll also be back tomorrow, and we will just kind of hopefully get that video up before Sunday. Hopefully you guys all had a awesome trading day, in particular an awesome trading week. I know these last 2 weeks have been pretty great with the rebound that we've gotten. Hopefully you guys have been able to get yourself repositioned. I've had a little bit of a tough time. I know buying the undercut and rallies, back through the 50-day UNRs you know, basically against October 22nd's low was definitely the move. But, you know, I've had a little bit of a tough time. Even a Caterpillar, right? Like looking at this thing, just you know, pretty annoying. I buy this thing on the 26th, shakes me out 3 days ago, and then, you know, you're basically closing at highs of the formation. So a little bit of, you know, a frustrating situation, just being shaken out a little bit out here. So hopefully you guys are trading better than I am, and I will see you guys on Monday. Cheers.